They say every rebellion begins with silence. But this one began with a scream. A queen once stood in chains, her kingdom stolen, her daughters beaten, her honor dragged through the dirt by Roman hands that believed she'd bow forever. They laughed as she fell. They thought they'd broken her. But something ancient stirred in that humiliation, something the conquerors couldn't see. A woman who had been a symbol became a spark, a mother became a weapon, and a queen became fire. That night she didn't pray for mercy, she sharpened her rage. She united tribes that had hated each other for generations. She painted her skin in ash and blood, and when the sun rose, her war cry shook the earth. Cities burned, legions fell. The empire that mocked her name learned the cost of underestimating silence. Boudica didn't fight to win. She fought to be remembered. Because once a person realizes they've been treated like a beast of burden, there's no going back to the stable. And that's the heart of the story. When obedience turns to fire, the world changes shape. When a soul that's been ridden too long finally stands up, no empire can stop it. Stay till the end. Because what happened to Boudica still happens to every one of us, and how you rise from it determines whether you live as the donkey everyone rides or the wolf everyone fears. There's a strange sickness in the modern world. Everyone wants to be liked. Everyone wants the smile, the pat on the back, the approval that says you're one of us. But here's the quiet tragedy. The more you try to be liked, the less respect you get. Because people don't worship kindness, they exploit it. They don't bow to the agreeable, they ride it like a mule until it collapses. Most men spend their lives trying not to offend. They walk on eggshells, nod when they want to roar, apologize for breathing too loud. They've mistaken politeness for power. They've confused submission with peace. But peace without power is slavery wearing perfume. Imagine a donkey in a busy village. Everyone loves the donkey. They pat it, feed it, use it to carry their burdens. It's harmless, gentle, always available. But when it dies, they replace it the next day. No one remembers its name. That's what happens to men who live to be liked. They get ridden to exhaustion by bosses, lovers, friends, and then replaced by someone hungrier, meaner, or simply less willing to kneel. You see this in workplaces every day. The man who never says no, the one who stays late, fixes everyone's mess, and apologizes for not being enough. He thinks he's earning respect. But in truth, he's training the world to depend on his silence. He's teaching them that he'll never bite. And no one fears a creature that doesn't bite. Let's break it down. Respect is not built on kindness, it's built on consequence. People respect you only when they believe crossing you has a price. That's why wolves are hated but never ignored, and donkeys are loved but always used. History never remembered the ones who pleased everyone. It remembered those who forced the world to change its tone. Think of Vlad the Impaler. A man whose legend was soaked in blood, yes, but behind that horror was a truth. His enemies feared him so much they stopped invading his land. He understood something most people today have forgotten, that being feared keeps you free, that mercy without strength is just an invitation for predators. And yet, the modern man still bows, still bends, still hopes that by being soft he'll be loved. But love given out of convenience is just disguised contempt. And every time you swallow your voice to fit in, you teach people that your boundaries are negotiable. This sickness runs deep in families, workplaces, relationships. Parents raise sons to be nice instead of strong. Bosses reward compliance over creativity. Women say they want a kind man, but follow the one who commands presence. Society tells you to be harmless, but secretly admires those who aren't. Here's the thing. Being liked is easy. Being respected is hard. Because respect demands a backbone, not just a smile. The world doesn't revolve around approval. It revolves around dominance, status, and perception. Even in nature, it's the wolf that dictates the direction of the pack, not because it's liked, but because it's necessary. People don't follow you because you're nice. They follow you because you make them feel safe or scared. Both emotions serve power. And if that sounds dark, it's because truth often is. There's a reason most people will never reach the top. They're too busy asking for permission to climb. You must unlearn that. You must burn the need to be liked. You must become someone who can stand in silence while others whisper, because the moment you stop caring about being liked, you become dangerous. And dangerous men move differently. That's what separates the donkey from the wolf. The donkey waits for someone to tell it where to go. The wolf decides where the path begins. When Shaka Zulu was humiliated as a child, mocked for his illegitimate birth, he didn't spend his life trying to be accepted. He spent it building an army that made the world tremble. He didn't chase love, he built fear, and fear protected him longer than love ever could. So ask yourself this: are you living to be adored or to be remembered? Because no one builds statues for those who never upset anyone. No one writes songs for the agreeable. And no one fears the donkey. But the wolf? He's hated. He's hunted. And yet, his howl echoes long after he's gone. There comes a moment in every man's life when something breaks inside. Not loudly, not with fireworks or screams, but with quiet disgust, the kind that comes when you finally see yourself the way others do. You realize they don't respect you. They depend on you. There's a difference. They need you to carry their weight, to absorb their moods, to take blame for their failures. And you do. Because you think loyalty will earn you gratitude. It never does. One day, the donkey looks up and realizes it's not surrounded by friends, it's surrounded by riders. That's when the awakening begins. It usually starts small. You notice how people only call when they want something. You notice the coworker who takes credit for your work but blames you when things go wrong. You notice how your kindness has turned into everyone's shortcut. And then it hits you. This world doesn't reward effort, it rewards leverage. That's when something starts to shift in your mind. A bitterness maybe, but not the weak kind. The kind that comes before transformation. Because before a man becomes dangerous, he becomes tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying others. Tired of apologizing for his strength. This is where most people quit, right at the edge of awakening. They feel the discomfort of realizing their role, but instead of changing, they double down on being liked. They'd rather stay a used donkey than risk being a hated wolf. But not everyone. Some let that bitterness turn into fire. That's how men like Genghis Khan were born. He was once abandoned, betrayed by his tribe, left to die in the wild. He learned early the world doesn't hand you respect. You take it. When he came back, he didn't ask for forgiveness. He came back as a storm. He built an empire from ashes. Not because he was chosen, but because he stopped asking for permission to exist. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most men never make it past that line. They know they're being used, but they still keep carrying the load. Because they're addicted to belonging. They'd rather be needed than feared. But once you wake up, belonging starts to feel like a trap. You start noticing how approval tastes like poison sweet at first, deadly after. That's when the anger hits. And anger, when harnessed, becomes clarity. You stop apologizing for being misunderstood. You stop chasing explanations that no one wants to hear. You stop offering loyalty to people who see you as a convenience. In that silence, a new kind of man begins to form. One who doesn't ask what people think, he watches what they do. One who doesn't beg for respect, he demands it through action. You might lose people when that change starts. You'll confuse them. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold, distant, arrogant. But remember, that's what they call anyone who stops being their mule. Queen Boudica knew that feeling. A queen who watched Roman soldiers whip her, assault her daughters, and laugh at her pain. They thought she would kneel. Instead, she rose. She united tribes that had hated each other for centuries. She led them into war not for glory, but for dignity. She burned Roman cities to the ground. She didn't win in the end, but she died standing. And in death, she became a symbol of wrath and freedom. That's what awakening looks like. It's not about victory. It's about reclaiming your spine. So when the donkey wakes up, he doesn't turn into a wolf overnight. He simply refuses to kneel. That's enough to terrify everyone who benefited from his obedience. You'll notice the same thing in your own life. The moment you set a boundary, people will show you who they really are. The ones who used to praise you will start mocking you. The ones who relied on your silence will call you selfish, but that's good, because it means they finally feel what you've felt all along the weight of accountability. In those moments, don't shrink. That's your test. Every man who wakes up faces this storm. The backlash, the loneliness, the guilt. That's the price of self-respect. You'll feel lost. You'll question if it's worth it. But deep inside, a voice will whisper, finally, you're becoming someone they can't ride anymore. You'll walk different, speak less. But when you do, your words will carry weight. Because now every no comes from a place of power. Every silence is a boundary. Every decision is your own. This is how the transformation begins, quietly, brutally, beautifully. The world won't celebrate it, but one day it will remember it. Because the day the donkey wakes up, the riders lose their kingdom. When a man stops begging to be understood, he starts to understand himself. That's the first sign of transformation. The silence that once felt like punishment now becomes his fortress. The solitude that used to sting now feels like oxygen. He's not angry anymore, he's aware. Awareness is what turns weakness into strategy. You start noticing how people move, how they talk, what they hide behind their smiles. You see manipulation not as evil, but as a language one you now speak fluently. This is where the wolf begins to rise. He doesn't roar. He studies. He plans. He learns the rules not to obey them, but to bend them. Power, after all, is not in brute force. It's in perception. Frederick the Great of Prussia understood this perfectly. He wasn't just a king. He was a chess player with a kingdom as his board. He turned intellect into intimidation. When his generals hesitated, he didn't yell. He stared until silence became loyalty. He knew something most men never learn. A wolf doesn't need to chase. It only needs to make others afraid of running. The wolf rises through control of his words, his time, his emotions. He no longer explains himself. He no longer reacts. He chooses his silence like a weapon. Here's the thing. People mistake emotion for connection, but emotion is just leverage waiting to be used. Once you control your emotions, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. That's what Thomas Edison did in business. He didn't just invent, he dominated. When rival inventors emerged, he didn't argue. He strategized. He controlled the narrative. He understood that being right doesn't matter. What matters is being believed. That's the art of the wolf. He shapes perception until truth itself bends around him. But this power doesn't come without a cost. It demands isolation. You start losing people not because you push them away, but because they can no longer manipulate you. You'll feel that distance grow. Conversations that once mattered will feel hollow. Jokes won't hit the same. Crowds will exhaust you. That's normal. Wolves don't belong in herds. The wolf rises quietly. He doesn't post about his growth. He doesn't announce his comeback. He just stops showing up where he's not respected. And that absence becomes his presence. People start noticing. They whisper, something's different about him. Yes. He stopped playing the role they gave him. He stopped being available. He stopped explaining why he's tired of being used. And in that withdrawal, power returns. Even in modern life, this shift changes everything. At work, you start saying no. You stop volunteering for everyone else's chaos. You start negotiating with quiet authority instead of desperate enthusiasm. People sense it, that edge, that stillness, that don't test me energy. And it changes how they treat you. Not out of affection, but out of respect. That's how the wolf wins, by mastering distance. Now look at Machiavelli. He spent his life studying men who ruled kings, tyrants, generals. He saw patterns that never changed. He realized that power belongs not to the strongest, but to the most strategic. A lion may scare enemies, but a fox survives longer. Machiavelli understood that a man must be both the lion and the fox, brutal when he must be, clever when he can be. That's what the rise of the wolf really means. Not violence, not cruelty, but mastery of emotion, of time, of presence. Most people can't hold silence. They fill it with excuses, laughter, noise. A wolf uses silence as a mirror. He watches who can't handle it. Those who rush to fill it reveal their fear. And fear, once seen, is easy to control. So you stop talking too much. You stop trying to convince. You start observing patterns: who interrupts, who flatters, who avoids accountability. And slowly, you build your circles smaller, sharper, stronger. No yes men, no riders, just other wolves, the kind who hunt alone but respect the pack. This stage of life is dangerous not because of enemies, but because of temptation. You'll be tempted to prove you've changed. Don't. Proving is what mules do. Demonstrating is what wolves do. Let your results speak. Let your silence create tension. Let your presence unsettle. Because the wolf doesn't announce he's coming. The forest just goes quiet. So when you start feeling misunderstood, good. When people start keeping their distance, better. It means you've stepped out of their control. It means you've stopped being the ride. You've become the storm they can't predict. This is not arrogance, it's evolution. And evolution always looks like rebellion to those who refuse to change. Every rise carries a shadow. The moment the wolf takes his throne, the air changes around him. The same voices that once ignored him now speak his name with hesitation. They respect him, but they also resent him. That's the first tax of power isolation. People stop treating you as human and start treating you as a force. They measure their words, hide their envy, smile too long. You see through it. You start missing the days when you could laugh without strategy, trust without calculation. But those days are gone. Because once you've tasted power, innocence doesn't return. Even the great conquerors understood this. Genghis Khan, after building an empire that stretched from the Pacific to Europe, confessed that he could command armies but not his own heart. He had everything, and yet no one could speak to him as an equal. When you stand too high, the air gets thin. You start to suffocate on your own success. Power isolates because it forces truth into the open. The weak will always mask their weakness with love until your strength exposes it. Then they turn. They whisper that you've changed, that you've become cold, ruthless, impossible to please. But the truth is simpler. You've stopped pretending weakness is virtue. Here's the thing. The world needs wolves, but it secretly hopes they fail. Because if you can stand tall after saying no, after walking away, after enforcing your boundaries, it reminds everyone else how small they've chosen to stay. And that reminder burns. So yes, power costs peace. You can't keep everyone comfortable and remain strong. You can't speak truth and stay loved by those built on lies. Even Frederick the Great, philosopher king, spent his nights alone in candlelight writing to himself because no one around him dared to speak freely. Power gives freedom, but it steals simplicity. You'll feel it in your daily life too. When you start setting standards, people call you difficult. When you demand respect, they label you controlling. When you walk away from gossip, they call you arrogant. But deep down they know they can no longer use you. And that's what they truly hate. There's another cost. The constant awareness. Every move you make matters. Every word carries consequence. You start guarding your thoughts like state secrets. The mask of control never comes off. It's exhausting. You will look around and realize you've built walls so high that not even love can climb them. That's the paradox of power. It keeps you safe, but also alone. Look at Vlad the Impaler again. He ruled through fear and saved his land from invaders, but his own people turned on him when the terror no longer served them. He died betrayed, not defeated. That's the hidden rule. Those who fear you today may conspire tomorrow. Fear protects you, but it also poisons loyalty. That's why wisdom matters more than domination. A real wolf knows when to bite and when to disappear. He knows that control isn't about shouting. It's about reading the room, watching the eyes, sensing the shifts before they become threats. You'll need that same awareness. Because once you climb high enough, most attacks come smiling. People won't stab you, they'll lean close and whisper doubts. They'll tell you to relax, to soften, to be normal again. They'll call it advice, but it's a leash disguised as concern. Never forget this. Comfort is the enemy of dominance. The moment you let it in, you start shrinking back into the herd. So yes, the wolf's life is lonely. But loneliness isn't emptiness, it's focus. It's the sound of your own thoughts unpolluted by the crowd. It's the silence where you hear the difference between need and want, between noise and truth. The price of power isn't too high. The price of weakness is. And when you understand that, you stop craving company and start craving clarity. You choose the few who challenge you over the many who comfort you. You'd rather dine alone than be surrounded by liars. Every king, every leader, every strong mind learns this sooner or later. Strength demands solitude. Not because you hate people, but because you finally love your peace more than their approval. So you walk with measured steps. You don't rush. You don't chase. You move like someone who owns his time. That is the mark of real power, not noise, not validation, but stillness. The quiet certainty that you can stand alone and still command respect. It's heavy, yes, but it's worth it, because once you pay the price, the world can't charge you again. When the noise fades and the dust settles, a strange calm begins to spread. It isn't joy, it isn't relief, it's understanding. The man who once bent to every demand now moves differently. Not faster, not louder, just deliberate. Every action comes from choice, not compulsion. He has stopped chasing acceptance. He has stopped proving worth. He has nothing left to prove because everything that needed proving has already bled out of him. That's the final form of strength. Not dominance, not revenge. Detachment. To be untouchable is not to be above pain. It's to stop negotiating with it. When you were the donkey, your emotions owned you. Every insult hit deep. Every rejection felt personal. Every silence made you anxious. But the wolf sees through the illusion. He knows the world is just layers of fear, ego, and hunger disguised as virtue. You start noticing that most people don't actually want freedom. They want permission. They want someone to tell them they're good, they're right, they're safe. But you've gone too far for that now. You don't need permission. You don't need reassurance. You've walked through betrayal, through loneliness, through the cold silence of power, and found something better than approval. You found peace in being misunderstood. That's when you become untouchable. The world can still talk. They can still lie. But none of it sticks anymore. Their words fall off like rain on armor. Because you've built something inside that no one can reach: discipline. The discipline to think before you react. The discipline to choose solitude over noise. The discipline to walk away while they're still arguing. This is the mastery the ancients understood, but the modern world forgot. Power isn't about control over others. It's about control over yourself when everything around you begs for reaction. You become the man who doesn't flinch, the one who sees chaos and remains composed, the one who can be kind without being weak and ruthless without being cruel. Machiavelli wrote that it's safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But what he didn't say, or maybe what people forget, is that the ultimate power is to be neither feared nor loved, but unaffected. That's the apex of freedom. You stop living in reaction to others. You stop trying to control outcomes. You master yourself, and by doing so, you master everything that touches you. Even Shaka Zulu, ruthless as he was, understood that discipline was the true weapon. He trained his men not just to fight, but to obey the rhythm of control, to channel rage into precision. That's why they won. Not because they were strongest, but because they were most focused. That's what you must become. A storm contained inside a calm man. In real life, this transformation is subtle. You'll still go to work, still talk to people, still smile. But under that smile, there's steel. You no longer tolerate manipulation disguised as kindness. You no longer feel guilty for saying no. You no longer explain your silence. People will notice. They'll test you. They'll push to see if you're still the same. Don't react. Let them wonder. Your new language is action. Your new loyalty is to truth. And your new goal isn't to win arguments, it's to maintain peace in your mind. The untouchable man doesn't fight every battle. He picks the one that matters and he finishes it cleanly. Then he disappears before the applause. That's what real strength looks like. Silent exits, not loud declarations. Precision, not chaos. Control, not drama. At this stage, you start to see the pattern. The world runs on emotion. You run on purpose. They seek attention. You seek results. They react. You respond. This difference is what separates the wolves from the herd forever. And when you reach this level, you don't hate the donkeys anymore. You pity them. You remember that once, You were one of them, eager to please, desperate to belong. You smile because you've outgrown the illusion. But you never forget the lesson, because power without compassion becomes tyranny, and wisdom without fire becomes cowardice. Balance both. Be calm but ready, humble but alert, still but armed. That's the paradox of becoming untouchable. You feel everything, but nothing can break you. You love deeply, but you never beg to be loved back. You walk alone, but you never feel lonely. You lose people, but you never lose yourself. And when you finally look in the mirror, you don't see the donkey or the wolf anymore. You see something beyond both, a man who owns his life completely, a man who can walk into a room without needing to dominate it, because presence speaks louder than power ever could. So remember this: better to be a wolf everyone hates than a donkey everyone rides. But better still, to become the kind of man who doesn't care whether he's hated or loved because he knows who he is. And that's enough. When the flames died and the dust settled, the Romans wrote their version of Boudica's story. They called her a barbarian, a rebel, a woman consumed by rage, but they never understood the truth. Boudica didn't burn the empire because she hated it. She burned it because she'd rather die standing than live kneeling. And that's the fire every one of us carries. Somewhere inside, beneath all the fear, all the people-pleasing, all the pretending, there's a part of you that refuses to kneel any longer. That's the part they can't tame. That's the part they try to shame, silence, or ride into submission. But one day, that part wakes up. And when it does, it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't beg to be liked. It simply stands, burns, and walks through the smoke free. Boudica's war ended centuries ago. But yours is happening right now in your job, your relationships, your mind. Every time you choose respect over approval, every time you say no when it would be easier to stay quiet, every time you walk away instead of being ridden, you continue her rebellion. Because freedom isn't given, it's taken back, one decision at a time. So the next time they call you cold, too proud, too distant, too different, remember the queen in chains who set the world on fire. Remember that silence is not peace when it costs your soul. And remember, it's better to be the fire they fear than the servant they love. The world bows to those who refuse the saddle.